It's the Awake Space Astrology Podcast. I'm Laurie Rivers, your host, here to help you with some inspiration to get those aspirations out into the world. Well, guys, it's here, March 2025. I've been looking at March 2025 for a really long time. And I broke down the astrology back in May of 2024 for the 2025 year ahead that I gave in June, because every single year I give a year ahead for the next year around the solstice, the summer solstice. And then I do a follow-up in the fall. And March is not the most intense month of 2025, but it'll sure feel like it as we go through it. There is a breather this year, but it's not for a few months yet. So I know it's easy to get lost in despair and worry and fear and doubt. And that is human. There is no blame to have any emotion. Make no mistake when I'm telling you to hold on to hope. It is never with a judgment against worry, fear, doubt, insecurity. The world is a pretty messy place right now. And it would be regardless. You have to remember, I was looking out at 2025 back in the 90s, knowing it was going to be a poop show. And I even just didn't want to look at it for a really long time. So I didn't study it in depth until we got closer into it, because it was very intense and very out of context. So there were multiple paths available. None of them were super fun. Okay. And they all had a few things in common, and that is massive systemic change, which we've been going through. We've been going through massive systemic change for about 30 years. It's intensified in the last 17. Okay. So now don't go away, because I'm going to give you some solutions. I did a poll in the Patreon for supporting members, and I asked what they wanted more of and what they were there. And people overwhelmingly voted with how to deal with the energy. And so that's really what the Awake Space Astrology Podcast is all about. And of course, I dial in deeper in patron-only podcasts and in the community and through live streams. But never think you're getting shortchanged here. And you can always thank a patron in the Spotify comments, because without the patrons, there is no podcast or anything else. A lot of people have been asking where I've been on TikTok. Well, astrologers are not immune to transits. I say that all the time and with great frequency. And I have had my own transits. So not only was I also walking through concrete in February, my mother's been not feeling well. And so we've been trying to get to the bottom of that. And of course, when it rains, it pours, and there's been other family things to deal with. And as a Cancerian, I'm always going to choose my family. So been dealing with those things, and some days it's been as much as I can do to get the podcast up and to be available to patrons. So I'll be back on TikTok. You're probably going to see a lot more clips from the podcast. I've got some wonderful help editing so that I'm not doing it all on my lonesome. So that's exciting. In this episode, we're going to go through the astrology of March. I have a very special guest, Kimberly Bellew, who has the MCE, and you're going to hear more about that. It is a metaphysical collective exchange that you can check out. She has a Patreon and an Etsy shop, and she sent me some gifts, and I did an unboxing. So you can check the video out on Spotify if you're listening to this on YouTube or anywhere else. So patrons get some of this podcast done in segments, so they'll get just so they can refer to the headlines or whatever. I'm changing up some stuff in the Patreon. I put out the weekly schedule. Monthly schedules don't work for me because, well, they just don't work for me. I have a ninth house sun and a ninth house Mercury and a Sagittarius Mars, and well, outlines help and routines to some degree. Thank you, Saturn in my sixth house. However, I'm going to do some patron only pods at the different tiers. Okay. So we've got the patron spotlight, and wonderful patron Rachel is in our spotlight this week. She is a PhD research chemist. Really amazing. Also a high school chemistry teacher. And we have a wonderful rousing talk, and that'll be for all patrons this week. You can check out Rachel. Let me grab that schedule, and I can tell you what's going on in the Patreon. I'm not gonna lie, some of you in the comments made me cry. So the podcast comes out today, March 3rd, podcast release, and we're gonna do a member poll in relationship to the podcast. So we'll see who listened. The 4th of March, we have a patron only live, and that is all patrons in the chat, the paying patrons. So if I say, sorry, it's a patron only live, all patrons is free as well as paid. So patron only live and a magazine release on the 4th. It might be the 5th before I get the magazine out. I had a family emergency tonight that I had to take care of. And so I'm still writing articles. I'll talk about the magazine a little bit later in the podcast. And then we've got the patron spotlight coming out on the 5th. And I might switch those around so you're not missing any content. And then I've got a couple different patron-only podcasts coming out on the 6th. So there'll be one for the $15 and up tier. I'm going to do a very special one for the mystery school and up as well. So those are going to get switched up. So I think every week I'll do some of the higher tiers because I like to give them some love, and they've been very patient with me. Game night live stream on Fridays. We are putting our attention onto some conscious dissociation and role playing, and there's plenty of astrology talk. Super fun, and I fixed the Zoom webinar chat so that the panelists can chat as well. So, because it's been killing us, and I finally figured out how to do that. It wasn't obvious. We've got the patron slumber party on the 8th. And then Sunday link update is in the chat. So if you're a supporting patron in the Awake Space Lounge, which is where we try to keep things a little more lighthearted, a little community centered. It's where you can just go to celebrate. We try to keep the venting chamber for the primordial screams. And in the headlines, Laurie predictions, that's where under specific news articles we can have discussion. We've got a creativity channel, etc. But once a week, doing a slumber party. That's right. Once a week, doing a slumber party. And then, of course, the podcast will come out. So super fun. Super fun. I'm not going to lie. I'm feeling pretty proud of myself for getting all that recording done. So grab your favorite beverage, take a few deep breaths. If you didn't get a chance to listen to the Pisces new moon meditation, I urge patrons to go check that out. That's for $5 and up, and it's a creative visualization to help you connect to your higher guidance. You can use it even if it's not the Pisces new moon. In fact, I'll probably edit it a little bit to make it just tuning in with your guidance. I really like the editing I did on that. I did that one myself. I didn't ask anybody to help me with the editing, and it's pretty cool. I want to talk to you before I go through the shit show that's March. I want to talk to you more about how we can actually harness this energy to our advantage instead of getting caught up in the collective waves of worry, fear, doubt, insecurity, panic, all the big feels that, including outrage, that deplete us over time, and how we can replenish ourselves in this energy. So there's that. So grab your tea, grab your coffee, grab your matcha, grab your cocoa. And whether we're driving to work or school, or we're studying, or we're taking the kids on a walk, or we're taking ourselves on a walk, or we're shopping, or we're folding laundry, and cleaning the kitchen, we're doing it together. All right, let's get started. There will be talk of rumors of war, end of time, end of days. And the prophets on every street corner will be hailing the end of the world. And if I had $1 for every time that happened, I'd be a very wealthy woman. There will be discordance in March in the outer world because we're dealing with systems change. We're dealing with power dynamics change. And I'm going to tell you that everything and everyone in charge right now, with some exceptions, but few, will not be here with great longevity. Okay, they're not going to be here for 2 decades. Okay, they're not going to be here for a decade. There's going to be rapid change in the preceding months and years because everything on this planet is changing because we're in another rung on the wheel of evolution. And hopefully not revolution, because revolution just tends to lead us with another despot. You know, revolution means to turn in a single turn on a wheel. Whereas when we're evolving, we're moving up in a spiral. Unless we're devolving, but that's a discussion for another day. I personally don't think nihilism is very sexy, nor do I think it is realistic. I think fatalistic nihilism is a cause of many of our problems. And this energy in March, we have Venus already retrograde. Mercury will be retrograde on the day of the full moon, which is also an eclipse. And it's easy to look at that and go, whew, that's a lot. But wait, there's more. We have Neptune entering Aries and a solar eclipse. All of this I'm covering in the magazine as well. It's volatile. These are the winds of change that are blowing in hot and hard. And yet it is in this chaotic space that is almost liminal that we can create our own magic. Now, most people mistake magic with getting their own way all of the time. And I think there's many a practitioner who can tell you for certain that that isn't how it works. But we can create a bubble of reality around us that is a little harder to shatter when we are able to hold our consciousness steady. Now, I wrote an article for the magazine on what it means to hold our consciousness. And I gave one of my very favorite exercises, which is narrating your reality. It's easy to get caught up in the social media and the memes and the rallying cries. And people just begin repeating one another. And that is a very dangerous thing. Emotions are contagious. Thoughts are contagious. But to hold your consciousness allows you to sway the collective consciousness. But you can't do it for that reason. Do you remember Genie in Aladdin? You know, when Robin Williams played the genie? Cosmic power in an itty bitty living space. We are genies in a bottle in our own right. And I'm not talking about gin. Don't correct me on the mythology. I'm well aware of it. We're going with a cartoon. But imagine the greater part of you is connected to the whole of the universe, and it's squeezed into this physical being, which is your physical body. And we are powerful. And we're more powerful when we connect collectively. And yet the collective is so ill-trained, and I will wager that it was done purposely, because notice how they whip people up into a frenzy. Because the more we are blowing our wad of energy in potently by screaming into the void, the less we are able to join together in concert, expending much less energy and being much more effective. The energy in March is one that if you can hold steady in your faith, and I'm not talking religion, connecting to your God, your goddess, your all that is, your higher self, your guides, your guidance, your ancestors, whatever you want to call it, your source, your universe. If you can do that and trust that you can be like water, as Bruce Lee said us to be like water, my friend, then you influence outcomes. And they don't have to be big influences. You're not going to get world peace. First of all, that's probably unattainable at any point in time. We have never had it. There may be things you were unaware of, and maybe now you're finding that being aware is not always what you thought it would be. But if you can hold your consciousness, and I'm not saying put your head in the sand like an ostrich, but if you can hold your consciousness in the face of what is, and see it that it is what it is, and put your feet firmly on the ground, and be in the moment, and assess the reality of your present moment, then you can help shift the tide ever so slightly, and it's ever so slightly that will make the difference. That is power. Power is not in the grand gestures and the big manifestations and the, ooh, look, a new car. Ooh, I won the lottery. Miracles and manifestation are when the most unlikely little things occur. When someone you thought would never choose a certain direction for their own benefit suddenly gives you a call and says, I've decided to do this thing. That will help me. Or when you can see through the cracks, see the light, even on a dark and dreary day. That is the space where magic happens. And we will need our imaginative faculties this month to imagine solutions, not problems. Anyone can point out a problem. Anyone. It doesn't take a genius to point out a problem. That's why all those pseudo-intellectuals do it. Oh, they talk around and round about what is wrong with the world and blah, blah, blah. It takes a genius to find a solution. And as Einstein once said, the same thinking that creates the problem cannot find the solution. You have to think differently, my friends. And I know that the world looks scary to many people right now. And I know we get through it. A lot of you want to know when it's going to be okay. And I always say, okay is relative. And people say, when is it going to be better? And I say, when we make it better. And that too is relative. We have to get clear. We have to be concise. And we have to be focused. And you can have ADHD and focus. You just have to redirect. It takes practice. Ask me how. So the most powerful thing you can do this month is start each day intentionally and go to bed each night intentionally. The way I do this is as I roll over into my bed, I feel the mattress under me. And I say, oh gosh, I like the way this feels. I like my sheets. I'm middle-aged, so I get the good ones. I like my sheets. Malcolm My dog is usually snuggling right up next to me, and oh, I love Malcolm. And I say, I'm going to sleep for as long as I need and be as rested as I can so that I can approach my day with the energy I need to be of service to myself and my community. And yes, that includes my family. I don't see community as exclusive of family. And then when I wake, I tell myself I'm awake. And before I look at my phone and check the Patreon or read my emails or check the news, I take care of my physical needs, including making my coffee, and I go sit outside or on the steps if it's inclement, and I look at the sky and I say, what a lovely day. Today is a lovely day. Even if I don't feel like it's lovely, because some days I wake up on the wrong side of the bed just like anybody else, but I do my best to correct my course. And then I remind myself of my intentions for the day. Not, oh, I intend to do this, but my intention is to be of service. How am I serving today? What is my agenda? And when I do that, everything goes well. It's the days I forget and I check the news before I've had my coffee that things go south pretty rapidly. And yet I can catch it by noticing and say, ooh, I think I need to do a reboot. And I'll go outside and I'll look at the sky. I'll say, oh, what a lovely day. How can I be of service? Now, those are things I've done to trigger myself into a state of consciousness. And that is the slipstream of thought that I choose to be on instead of getting swept up in the furor of life. I'm giving you this exercise in preparation for what's coming next because I'm going to go over March's astrology. And in the outer world, it is going to be very unstable. I don't think you need to be an astrologer to figure that out. It's pretty evident about what's going on right now. And yet, we have the great ability to influence our own daily existence, even in the midst of struggle. Learning to do that makes all the difference in the world, and it is honestly the basis of true wealth. I think we can see from the billionaires' behavior that they honestly have an affliction. They do not know how to be satisfied. They do not understand the joy of service. And service isn't about self-denial. We can be comfortable and serve, but if you do not know when you are full, when you have had enough, and when you are sated, well, then nothing is ever enough. And what a sad life that is. But likewise, self-deprecation, false humility, pretentious virtue, and performative behavior doesn't get us anywhere either. Learning to find your sweet spot, reasonable contentment, satisfaction in the moment is one of the most powerful states of consciousness you can possess. And it is not one that you will maintain 100% perfect ever in your life. It is a constant balance, and balance isn't a constant thing. In order to balance, you have to notice when you're off balance to readjust. A ballerina doesn't stay on their toes by standing still. They are consistently correcting, even though it may be difficult to notice with your eyes. They are consistently correcting their balance. Balance requires movement. And so we notice when we're slipping, if we're lucky, and we course correct. And by doing that, you are difficult to manipulate. You are difficult to outrage. It doesn't mean you won't be angry, but there's a big difference to outrage and anger. And for those of you who are tuning in from the 168 countries who listen, it kind of impacts everybody. And do keep those of us in America in your good thoughts. And I think you've realized, if you're in our community, we're not standing by willy-nilly. There are many ways to make a difference. Mine is to educate. All right, I've postponed it long enough. Let's take a look at March. And by the way, if you are a supporting patron at the $5 level and up, this Tuesday coming out is a special code so that you can stream the 2025 year ahead for free, because I was going to wait till April or May, and I just can't. It's too volatile. I'm like, no, people need this. But if you're a free patron, you'll get a very, very special discount. You'll get it for a very, very special price. And I think you'll be happy with that as well. So if you're wanting that, you can head over to the link in the show notes. All right. Let's talk about March 2025. It's a month. Venus is retrograde in Aries, although I did a segment last week. If you missed it, go back and listen. But Venus in Aries isn't bad. Everybody talking about Venus in Aries is ruining my... No, Venus in Aries retrograde is not bad. It's forcing review of what matters to you. What are your values? What is personal? And that may mean there's some painful things, but it's to review so you can make the necessary changes and the necessary adjustments so that you're more aligned authentically with your own self. Okay. And like I said earlier, sometimes awareness can be painful, because when we've deluded ourselves, when we've bought into an illusion, when we've lived in the Maya of this world, then we are prey to artifice, compromise, masking. And when we start peeling back the layers and get into the nitty-gritty, well, it can be a lot. I'm still avoiding giving you the astrology. I hate giving news like this. It's a bumpy month, okay? Remember when I used to always say it's crunchy? On the crunchometer scale, this is out of 1 to 10, it's a 12, okay? And it's pivotal and leads us to April. And April is, end of April is, but I'll spend this month, which is nice and long, getting you ready for next. So, God, we got to live one day at a time, though, people. Don't borrow trouble. Don't borrow trouble. Don't borrow trouble. All right, let me see. Where is... Let me get and find my projects. There it is. 2025 year ahead. Alrighty. I find what's interesting is I wrote this back in May and June of 2024, and slide 4 says New Year's Eve kicks off with a bang that sets action into motion. Old scores are not settled. And then New Year's Day 2025, in action is an action that too has consequences. And that's kind of the theme of 2025. March. I'm just going to read through this list very rapidly. And then I'll get into what's going to happen. We've got Venus retrograde on the 1st. The 2nd had Mercury conjunct Neptune, and the Sun squared Jupiter. March 3rd, Mercury ingresses into Aries, so get ready for people to be popping up and having lots of opinions. Be careful, people might take things very, very personally where it's not intended as well. March 5th, Mercury is sextile Pluto. We could see some interesting air traffic with that. We could also see some missiles. Probably not in the United States, but rocket launches, things like that. March 7th, the Sun is trine Mars. That's going to be a little spicy. March 11th, Mercury is conjunct Venus. March 12th, we have the Sun conjunct Saturn, which might be a somber day. March 14th, the Sun is sextile Venus. We have a full moon, and Mercury stations retrograde. And oh yeah, there's an eclipse. That's a total lunar eclipse, and I'll talk about that next week. We've got the Sun ingress Aries, which is the equinox on March 20th. March 21st, we have Venus sextile Pluto, which should be kind of interesting because Venus retrograde sextile Pluto will be when Venus is at 1 degree of Aries. March 22nd, we have the Sun conjunct Venus. The Sun in March 23rd, the Sun is sextile Pluto. And then March 24th, the Sun is conjunct Mercury. Let's see, we have March 25th, Mercury is sextile Pluto again because it's retrograde. And then March 27th, Venus ingress Pisces and Venus is conjunct Neptune. That's a very magical day. And as we get towards the end of March, we'll talk about how you can use that magical energy. March 29th, we have Mercury conjunct Neptune and the new moon, which is a partial solar eclipse. And again, we'll be talking about eclipses next week, just because I don't want this episode to be like forever and a day long since I started recording late. And then we have a very historic moment. March 30th, Neptune ingresses into Aries. Oh boy, we haven't seen that since 1861. Does that ring a bell? Now, history does not often repeat, but it does rhyme. And if you haven't noticed, the United States is somewhat divided. I honestly don't think we're as divided as they want us to feel. And I feel certain things are starting to unite us a little more than divide us. I know there's diehards out there. However, been reading the pulse online especially, and not living in a vacuum. So, but I think we can expect some historic events. This is what I had to say about March. Close saves and close shaves. A lot of could have been worse energy. And that's the attitude I want you to hold. If somebody said, oh my God, I could have had an accident, but you didn't. Okay. Oh my gosh, that plane could have hit the other plane, but it didn't. Okay. Oh my gosh, this could have been a war, but it wasn't. We can recognize what could have been, but we must recognize what is. Okay, so close saves and close shaves. A lot of could have been worse energy. Still a lot of water. Big monsoon rains globally, and that includes cyclones, hurricane-like winds, typhoons, atmospheric rivers, etc., causing landslide, mudslides, erosion events, sinkholes, strange tides, floods, etc. And that's going to be throughout March. And in fact, we're going to start kind of March off off with some crunchy weather, and then at the end of the month, we're going to see it again. We could see issues with chemicals, radiation, solar and otherwise, toxic waste, plastics, and issues to do with water quality. Bad virus and flu season continues. Lots of school closures and hospitals worldwide under strain, unlikely to see any kind of lockdown. Now, I have been saying for multiple years that COVID isn't over. Obviously, we know that. But we're going to see multiple viruses. And I know a lot of people are focusing on the bird flu. It is a concern, but you can see there's now measles. And then there has been a case of rubella also reported, which is German measles, which is very serious. And of course, we've heard about mumps and what have you. I think we're going to hear about more. And so hygiene, wash your hands, wash your stuff, and wash with soap and water when you can. Hand sanitizer is an emergency measure. And Rachel and I actually talk about that on the Patron Spotlight. World leaders continue to flex. We could see missiles, drones, and conventional weapons used, especially submarines, sonic weapons, espionage, NATO involved in a conflict around March 13th and 14th. Again, I wrote these predictions back in May and June of 2024. Within days of the full moon, which is on the 14th, we look like we're on the brink of war, but things stall out. Could be last-minute diplomacy, a national tragedy, or emergency that stalls a leader or preempts an attack. Could also see things just not work as Mercury stations retrograde. Collective sigh of relief. However, it could also be an accidental breach of boundaries or borders that causes tensions to spill over. Extremely intense weather, end of March, very wet, lots of flooding, dam integrity is weak globally, storm surges are massive. Now, there's another whole page, okay, of information, but I don't want to freak everybody out. So there's a lot going on in the world. We're gonna see some power outages, and when we talk about the grid in America, people are talking about it incorrectly. Okay, incorrectly. People act like we have one big national grid, and we do not. We have hundreds of grids in this country, if not thousands, that are interconnected. Texas is its own deal, and they need to work on that shit. But we don't just have one singular power grid. Okay, first of all, that would be dumb to do, Texas. And I don't even think all of Texas is on one. I think they have like two, but it's kind of dumb. But having different relays is smart, because if one goes down, you can feed into another. Now, these could be through issues with transformers. This could be power outages due to weather. This could be any manner of things. There is potential for conflict in the United States. Okay. It is obvious there are wrecking balls happening to the system, which did need restructuring, but it didn't need to be so damn messy. And playing whack-a-mole with agencies and policy and ignoring our Constitution is usually not a favorable thing to do. So there could be some interesting policy decisions that come out of the administration that cause people to protest, and protest loudly. And I do know we have veterans protest on the 14th in Washington, D.C. And I was like, oh, wow, that's interesting. We'll see how that goes. It is, if you live in the Washington, D.C. area, especially those of you who've had readings with me in the last 6 months, especially actually the last year and a half, when we've looked at March and April, I have been concerned, especially into the end of April. I've been very concerned about the DC area. Do be cautious. And I would say anywhere within an hour of Washington, DC, especially, there could be some interesting happenings. And that could be police action. That could be quasi, security rules like checkpoints and things like that. I've been asked, do I think there's going to be martial law? And I talked about that in the Mars Direct live stream that I did for patrons for free and paid, and it is in my Patreon, and it is something you just have to sign up and you can go watch. And I did talk about the potential for martial law. I don't give it an 80% chance. Okay. So that means I am uncertain. It is not out of the realm of possibility, and it is also not something I'm going to say you need to overly worry about, but I would say be more than ready for that potential between mid-March and early May, because things are very, very volatile. And I think we'll know more as we get past that eclipse, because that eclipse is a bit gnarly. It's a bit interesting, darlings. So March is spicy. It's not all that favorable for a couple of people in the administration. There's a lot of physical pressure there. And so we could see illnesses with leaders, etc. My predictions are already out. So the predictions that are in the magazine are already out in the Patreon, because if you are a magazine subscriber, and that's at the $15 level and up of the Patreon, I always give you the sneak peek of what's in the headlines and your horoscopes. So those are up. This week is a week. Every week is a week this month. So now, these are the things I think are most likely to be up in the headlines. And don't get mad at me that it's not good news, because honestly, 90% of what's in the headline isn't good news. It's not my fault. So, March 1st through the 3rd, the moon in Aries is demanding and fiery. And since this is coming out on the 3rd, you'll probably recognize some of these things that were in the headlines. Financial news, corrections in markets, issues with banking or payment gateways. That's all currencies as well. Discovery of arsonists or terrorist, issues with explosives. Weather patterns change, storm systems stall, cycling weather, which we're seeing in, I believe, the Indian Ocean. Peace agreements fail in all regions. Peace agreements fail in all regions. I wrote peach. My editor's going to have fun with that. Iranian leadership under pressure, issues with King of Jordan, chemical spills, oil leaks, or issues with corrosive materials. Let's see, volcanic eruption or firestorm, or issue with lava flows and lahars. Issues with militaries, rogue units or mercenaries, increase in geothermal activities, military contractor under investigation or speaks out against current policies. Retailer of note may face bankruptcy or close locations, not Joann's, because they had already done so. Authoritarians on shaky ground in Eastern Europe, Western Europe, Levant, North and South America. Attempted coups, insurrections, and political violence in city center, mall, or other public venue. Could see a shooting or stabbing. Poland dealing with border security and potential sabotage or terrorist attacks. Issues with militaries. Oh, I wrote that twice. International organizations under strain or face crisis. UN, NATO, etc. Leaders of all forms face opposition. Potential assassinations or deposing of leaders. Political dissidents and political protests en masse, and we saw that a little bit in Europe. Leaders in business, politics, and entertainment face backlash by lawsuits and legal means, and we saw some of that. March 3rd through the 5th with the moon in Taurus. The moon in Taurus is excited with the shakeups. Things could get heated. We could see earthquakes above a 6.0 possible. Increased potential of seismic activity, any active seismic zone. I'm not picking directions right now because just everything's a little more volatile. But the activity above a 6.0 would be in the more active fault lines, probably offshore. Okay, as Neptune is in the later degrees. Neptune does play a role since it's in a sextile with Uranus right now. Explosions, both accidental and man-made, arsons of government buildings and or manufacturing plants. That could also be attempted. Global financial crisis announced, or stock markets fall, crypto markets volatile. They could tank. I wrote that before it started tanking. Food poisoning or disease caused by food. Issues with cattle herds, disease or pests, explosions at manufacturing or food processing plants, issues with munitions depots, plants, or stolen weapons and equipment, massive accident involving semi-trucks and or rail, talk of sanctions against major world powers. It could also be boycotting or buy-ins too. Tech sector challenged, union activity calls for strikes, contract disputes and layoffs, Trump's health in question or he goes off the rails in some way. Cybersecurity breaches, data breaches, DNS server attacks, malware, and ransomware. Issues with livestock, food production, processing, and farms and ranches. We could see a big accident or explosion or fire. Could involve some kind of radiation or gas leak. Could be more than one kind of event globally. And it could just be, just a regular accident. Could see outbursts by people of note, temper tantrums, outrage, and ranting. Big erosion events, landslides, mudslides, sinkholes, levee breaches, dike failures, and dam breaches global. All of my predictions are global unless I'm mentioning a U.S. event. Huge weather issues, lightning, hail, hurricanes, tornadoes, cyclones, sandstorms, or torrential rain and flooding. Australia, watch out for that. Financial institutions, big bank, private equity firms, and credit card companies under pressure. Retail giant under pressure or strain. Maritime accident with or issues with Navy bases. Authority figures, leaders challenged, scandals revealed, and lies exposed. March 5th through the 9th, the moon is in Gemini. Isn't able to go forward fast, and things are bumpy because, Mercury's pre-retrograde. So it's things will feel a little wibbly wobbly. We could see big wind, fluctuating currents, temperatures swinging wildly. Could be hurricanes, microbursts, tornadoes, sandstorms, unseasonable wind. And it isn't necessarily, when I say hurricane, it's like hurricane level wind. Multiple storms active in one region. This is global. Issues with air travel, delays, air traffic control, and accidents of small aircraft and helicopters. Could be military. Poisoning, or air quality, water quality discussed. Massive car accident pileup, issues on freeways or high-speed rail. Issues with gas, chemicals, or radiation. Issues with commercial flights, airports, or air traffic control, or employees at airports or airlines. Rockets, satellites, ISS, the International Space Station, and astronauts. Data breaches and communication disruptions, meteorites, northern lights, or space debris falls to Earth, missiles, drones, and sneak attacks, legal matters, justice, and federal high courts. Global. Major author, speaker, or thought leader speaks out or has scandal. Issue with music industry, streaming service, or high-profile entertainer. International agreements or negotiations fail. Issues with NATO, European Union, journalists or journalism in the news, violence towards journalists, or it could be being locked out of the press corps, secrets leaked or revealed from corporations or government agencies, documents discovered that cause scandal or shed light on an unsolved mystery, major manufacturer issues recalls or has investigation into faulty parts, explosion in air, satellite fails or falls to Earth, meteorites or shooting stars, or some strange happenings in the sky or lights in the sky. Could include space station astronauts having issues. And then we wind up the week, March 7th through the 9th. The moon in Cancer brings it all up. Every last thing that happened in the past is up on deck, and people are grabbing torches. March 7th could see an explosion, fire issue in a neighborhood or restaurant. Big weather on deck, rain, snow, ice, flooding, high tides on rivers, breaches of seawalls and or levees. Big snow melt could cause flooding on tributaries of large rivers. Arsons and fires in domestic dwellings. UK government may be under strain. Public uprisings global. Accident on major roads, freeways, or bridges. Issues with foodborne illness, especially listeria and salmonella. Issues with dairy or dairy farms or dairy products recalled, poultry and eggs as well. Leaders and politicians under pressure or strain. CEO or a world leader has a health issue or steps down due to health or is deposed. Big rain. Issues with rivers, floodplains, atmospheric rivers, hurricanes, hail, big tides. Economic crisis or currency values in flux, inflation, trade imbalances. Person of note has a health crisis, heart attack, stroke, or disoriented, dizzy, or falls in public. Populist leader under pressure or attacked verbally or physically. Attacks in public spaces, mass casualty event, or school shooting or stabbing. Hopefully that one is wrong. Banking and currencies under strain. Erosion causing storms, hurricane waterspouts, big waves. Okay, so we're going to see some big weather because I wrote like 3 things about it. Restaurants close, issues with food supply, drop my mouse. I don't want to edit a whole lot this episode because I'm so tired. You know what Monday is besides podcast day. It's mom and daughter day. And that means I'm not going to get any sleep. Oh, where did that go before I dropped it? Oh, that's right. Secrets leaked or revealed from corporations or government agents. Oh, it rolled all the way up to the last page. Here we go. Major infrastructure destroyed or big failure of dam, bridges, or shopping center. Potential seismic activity, mostly offshore, but ranging from a 5.8 to 7.0. Potential tsunami. I'm thinking that would be more like in the Indonesia, Philippines, the Asia Pacific region, maybe as far north as Japan. But it could be in any active region in the Ring of Fire. Okay. Water quality issues, environmental issues, and climate change. Water wars begin, and that's arguing over who has the rights. Let's see. There we go. So that's what we've got until the moon moves into Leo. And that is going to be some big energy as well, especially on the 9th when the moon moves into Leo and it opposes Pluto. And we can expect big bada booms with that as well. Global. Does that mean it's happening to you directly? No. No, it doesn't. But did you want to be apprised of what's going on? I told you that 2025 would be the year that no one, well, unless they're very narrow lensed, could say climate change does not exist, because it sure as hell does. So we're all being impacted by it globally. We're going to see the impacts with weather, climate conditions. I mean, North Carolina's got fires going on. It's freaking March. That's unheard of in March. So, there's all manner of things going on. So again, go back and listen to the segment before this. And remember, we can hold our consciousness because we have to look at what's happening right to us, right in front of us. Okay. The time to panic is when it is time to panic. All right. The time to get ready to run is when it's the time to run. But letting our cortisol spike and our adrenaline rush when it is a perceived threat that is not directly in front of us and not directly happening in the moment actually harms us and does the perceived enemy no harm at all. So keep your hands busy. That's what my great grandma always used to say. Keep your hands busy. And that's why she taught me to do embroidery and crochet when I was a little girl. And they have gotten me through many a crisis in life because, You have to focus on those things. So get crafty, get creative. It's time to start our starts or look at starting our gardens. We had a wonderful patron spotlight last week. You can check that out in the Patreon, regardless of membership level. With a wonderful patron Sam, where we talked about small space gardening. And so there are things we can control, and that's what we want to put our focus on, because everything outside of our control is outside of our control. Okay. And we can gather together intentionally. We can put our focus on the outcomes we'd like to see. And it's honestly never as strong a magic when we try to get rid of a problem versus empower a solution. Okay, there's a big difference. I don't like that thing. I want it gone. Makes it very difficult to remove. Whereas I want to see more of this when we work with the energy, with the grain versus against it. Things are 10 times more powerful. So I ask you, what are your solutions? I'll put a poll up. You let me know. What kind of solutions do you want to see? Do you want to feel more at ease? Do you want to have your food planned out? Are you looking at a different kind of economic plan and how you spend your money? We all have the power to do something, no matter how small. All right. And next week in my Patron Spotlight, the wonderful Leslie Poston of Cyberspace Podcast joins me, and we talk about the importance of hope to your brain chemistry. So you'll find out more about that next week. All right, speaking of patrons, let's do a patron shout out. And then we will talk to Kim. And don't worry, I'm going to leave you on a high note this week. But let's shout out to patrons. It's time for patron shoutouts. Without patrons, there is no podcast. So big thanks to all my patrons. We always give our shoutouts to the newest members. And so here we go. We have Sarah, or Sarah. You spell your name the same as my daughter. TJ, Divine AF, Laurie Lovelady, Jess, Evelyn, Taylor, Jackie, Melissa, Julia, Kelsey, Abigail Drennan, Ayla, Artayana, Smitten Jazz Kitten, I've been waiting to say your name, Trisha, Kelsey, Tracy, JC, Martha, Jennifer, Allison, Flighty Girl, Juan, Sarah, Leah, Christine, Catalina, Alicia, Nicole, Taylor, Julia, Babs, Shannon, Haley, Kelly, Haley, Kay, you guys spell your names different, Heather, L, Katie, Utah, Beverly, Nikki, or Nikki Fox, Yasmin, D, Mary D, the Jersey Bee, Emo, Kelly, MF, Allison, Cassie, Aretha, Annie, Rose, KJ, Matthew, and Kendra. I want to say big shout outs as well to the late night crew. A lot of times I'll go on live late at night if I can't sleep or my brain's busy. And a lot of times that crew involves Illy and Alicia and Ralph and Lizzie. And oh my gosh, we have Taryn and Nicole sometimes catches us, and Katie in Australia with her beautiful baby dog. Casey, who's hanging out in Japan, our international crew, Brendan in Ireland, and Heather also in Ireland. So shout out to my international crew, and if I miss you and you're international, let me know. We'll give you a shout out. All right, let's talk to Kim. All right, this interview is near and dear to my heart. I have Kimberly Bellew with me, and she is one of my original supporters. Back in 2020 on TikTok, when I had like 5 people, and one of my very first patrons. It's been a ride, and she is the founder of the MCE, and I'm going to let you talk about that. She's also a maker of magical goodies, and I have some to show off because she sent me some.
Yes.
And I haven't looked at them yet. I've been a good girl.
Oh,
We're going to
you've been
unbox
very
them.
good. Thank you for this opportunity to be on the podcast. The MCE is the Metaphysical Community Exchange. And it's a Patreon I wanted to create a community.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, it's just rough out there. I know you've talked about it. I just want to have a safe space and a place where people can feel comfortable, have conversation, learn, and just create that village. Everybody needs a village.
Right. And in the village you're envisioning are people who are practitioners of a variety of metaphysical, whether it's tarot readers, people who do crystals, people who do astrology, psychic gifts, whatever it is, a place to grow, talk shop, etc. Am I correct in that?
So I separated out the communities based on kind of like of a high level metaphysical area. We have tarot, mediumship, psychic abilities, witchcraft, and just plain old spirituality. And it's a place to talk shop, but also promote small businesses. I kind of want to make a directory that everybody can link up that small business, and anybody who's in the Patreon could just look for service. And I want to be able to interview people, raise voices, and just have that community vibe. Also, exchange items, kind of like a metaphysical yard sale or trade.
Right.
And I think that's important. It's something that I know is going to be needed online. Just the way things are going financially around the globe, we're going to need that ability to exchange. Here is 3 crystals for a deck of tarot cards, things of that nature. So that's kind of the direction I'm going in. And I wanted it, it's behind on a paywall. Put it behind on a small paywall. I have just like community member level, and that's about $5 a month. And then metaphysicians, the metaphysicians level, and that's $10 a month. So I do that just to protect the community. I don't want people to go in there with bad intentions. I want to have a judgment-free zone. And that's the biggest thing. I know things are going to get rough for everybody, but especially those in the metaphysical community. So I just want to have that. Yep. I just want to have that safe corner of the world for them. And that was my inspiration to kind of put things together.
I love that. That's a great idea. And I like the idea of an exchange, especially when you're just getting started out too. It's a way to build confidence. I did that plenty. I traded actually astrology for therapy back in 1999. That gave me a lot of confidence, even though I was already charging for readings. But my therapist was like, I was like, I want to pay you. And he was like, I'd actually rather you do astrology for me. I was like, well, really? Okay. You know, he was a very cool and very rare and special person, helping that mama out. But, and then other times when I didn't have a lot of money, I would trade for a massage, you know, making sure it's equal, or with a medium or a tarot reader or somebody who did something a little differently than me as we've moved along. It's a great way to start. Um, when you talk about a safe way to have a conversation, for you, what are the elements of safety that you're bringing for people?
It's coming down to feeling comfortable, being authentic, not being judged, being able to have an open but respectful
Mm-hmm.
conversation,
Mm-hmm.
and just not having drama. I've
Yeah.
seen you laugh. I've seen so many platforms that have drama, and people feed into that. I don't
Mm-hmm.
want that in my Patreon.
Mm-hmm.
I would hope
Mm-hmm.
that would not happen. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I just want people to feel like they can communicate, they can talk about what they think, what
Mm-hmm.
they feel,
Mm-hmm.
and not have to worry, not
Mm-hmm.
looking for a fight.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You do see that extended in some spaces, metaphysical spaces. I think a lot of times because there's elements that are looking, when people feel powerless, they're looking for that. They think they're finding answers, and then you get you know, dogmatic fights, and there's room kind of for everything.
Yeah,
So I love that you're doing that. So,
yeah.
and you go ahead.
I think it hurts our our community globally when we
Mm-hmm.
attack each other.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of look at the witch wars on TikTok.
TikTok.
I'm like,
Those were a really good example of what I was talking about. People who found a little bit of
exactly.
power, and they don't realize it's patriarchy adjacent, and by dividing ourselves, you know,
Right.
and yeah,
It's
yeah.
they're like popularity contests, like back in high school. Communication, ideas, knowledge. We don't have to one up each other. Um, we need to come together globally
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because dividing us takes away our power.
Yeah, absolutely. It does. It does. So you are a polymath. Okay,
Yes.
so I happen to know Kim very well because she's one of my real ones, who's been through the whole ride.
Yeah.
Um, it's been a journey, but I happen to know you do a lot of things. You're very handy. You do
Yes.
your own. You do a lot of DIY stuff. You have an
Yes.
Etsy shop as well. We're gonna do a little unboxing of things today.
Yay.
Um, but for you, you tend to work a lot with nature and natural
Yeah.
elements. Let's talk about
Yeah.
that.
So, kind of speaking on a DIY, I'm really taking things back to when our grandparents were around. It's more than just the anti processed foods, chemical movement. It's stuff we can find in nature.
Mm-hmm.
I practice witchcraft by, by
Mm-hmm.
myself, um, and foraging.
And
And
you lean into the Celtic tradition, correct?
yes, I lean more into, the Irish path. I'm not, obviously living in Ireland, so I'm not considered an Irish witch, but that's the path I kind of go along.
That's your
But
ancestry.
yes, uh, I'm only second generation, so my grandfather was, immigrated here when he was 17, and we've been in the Boston area
Couldn't
for
tell.
2 generations. Yes, the accent. And I'm
I
trying
love
to
it.
control it right now.
No, I love it. I love it when you say my car.
My car. I'm trying to speak so
You
slowly.
said be authentic.
Yes.
I love all of you.
Yes.
Just let her rip.
Park the car in the Harvard yard.
Exactly.
but but with that said, I do things like make my home cleaning products, my own large detergent, pine sol. People don't realize pine sol was literally made from pine needles and
Mm-hmm.
vinegar. That's
Mm-hmm.
all. And
Right.
it's absolutely kind of ridiculous to buy that at the store. Nature
Mm-hmm.
supplies, you know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
I make things at home, cut costs. It allows me to put my little witchy spin on protections and
Yeah.
cleanses.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and it just feels better.
Mm-hmm.
It hits all areas. It saves me money.
Mm-hmm.
It's natural. I know I'm not, poisoning my family.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easy. It's so
Mm-hmm.
easy. And
Mm-hmm.
that's some of the
Mm-hmm.
things I'm
Yeah.
bringing to the community as well. Not just
Mm-hmm.
all traditional thoughts of metaphysics.
Mm-hmm.
Working this in day to day, um,
Mm-hmm.
and what you could do. You know, I
Mm-hmm.
put up little pictures all the time in Patreon of saying, hey, you're making a cup of tea, stir your intentions, use
Mm-hmm.
certain herbs in your tea, things of that
Mm-hmm.
nature. And
Mm-hmm. I
that's
love that.
also something I'm bringing to the community.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I love that.
I build things. I become my own home handyman. Uh, I've always had a knack. I like to take things apart, investigate,
Mm-hmm.
and put it back together,
Mm-hmm.
or make it better. If I see something on the TV, I can build it. You
I
know,
love that.
that's just my personality.
Hmm. Well, and just for your listeners to know, you are the head of your household.
Yes,
You are the breadwinner for your family, and
yes,
it is, on you to make sure things are happening. And I
right.
think there's a lot of people who will think they need somebody else. Now, granted, you do hire contractors for like important stuff like
Yeah,
electrical and
yeah,
roofs and things like that, but you make your own honey do and you're the honey who does.
right.
um I know there's a lot of people who think, oh, I can't do that because I didn't learn how to use power tools as a kid. What do you say to that?
YouTube is your friend.
Hmm.
Honestly, YouTube's your friend. I used to think the same thing as that patriarchal mindset. I can't do
Hmm.
it. A power tool's a man thing. No, it's
Hmm.
not. It's easy. Just
Hmm.
look it up, see a couple of videos, follow along, and eventually you'll be putting up walls, building your own furniture, fixing anything that broke in your house.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of some of the things as well I'm bringing to the Patreon. That
Mm-hmm.
attitude of you can do it. You
I
don't
love that.
need anybody's help unless you want it.
Right.
So,
And if it's a two-person job, obviously.
obviously,
But there are many things that we can do and be self-sufficient in. And I think when I see the term witch, knowing
mhm,
that it was always a derogatory term.
right,
People didn't they were wise people. They were people who were good at nature crafting. They were people who were makers. Um and connected to nature, and they might have had traditional beliefs that went way back. Maybe they forgot about it, like from the time of the druids, or a more indigenous lifestyle, because Europe had indigeneity as well.
right.
But and so got knocked out by the Romans in general, but it was there. And it's been carried forth. Like my great grandma did a lot of witchy stuff. She would have
Right.
ever classified herself as that because she was very much a churchgoer. Um, and one of the things people had a problem with women was their independence. And that's why so many got accused of witchcraft, whether they were or not,
Yeah,
was their independence. And women
I,
today need that empowerment. So
they
I love
do.
what you're doing. What do you say to this when people are like, "Oh, I don't want to call myself this," or
Be yourself.
mhm,
Knowledge is power.
mhm,
Not having to rely on somebody else
mhm.
is the most empowering thing. And if you need to, that's okay. Asking for help,
Oh, sure.
okay.
Mhm,
But you can do it. You don't
mhm,
need to fall behind somebody else.
mhm,
Independence, it's not a bad word, no matter who makes you believe it is.
mhm.
You're not that lonely cat lady that everybody is against right now.
You say, how can
um,
you be lonely when you got a cat?
exactly. Exactly. It's kind of like those, I shouldn't say myth, it's fact that the reason why cats, especially black cats, are associated with witches was back into, I think it was the 1400s, around the bubonic plague side. They were used to catch rats, and
Mhm.
the witches or medicinal women would keep the cats for that. And because someone someday just decided, oh, that's a witch, they have a cat, cats are the
Mhm.
devil, they got rid of the cat. And the bubonic plague happened because nobody was there to catch the rat.
So,
And
like,
that's
our
how
leaders have
everything,
always been geniuses.
right? Exactly. But it's again, it's that judgment that
Mhm,
gets the best of
mhm,
people.
mhm.
And it's kind of like, if it's do no harm, why do you care? Who
Right,
cares?
right.
Like,
I'm of an age where you had to be undercover unless you were in very specific places. So I spent like 20 years very, very quiet about what I
yeah,
did. Um,
same here. You know, I'm on the end of Gen X, but I grew up in a Catholic religious house in Boston, Irish Catholic. Um, so my parents were actually really relaxed. They didn't force me to church, but I still had respect for the church at the time.
mhm,
Um, but being brought up that way, we had to hide any signs of witchcraft,
Mm-hmm.
tarot, things like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
now I have my mother practicing witchcraft
Oh, sweet.
and carrying crystals. It's the first of the month. I was
Mm-hmm.
smoke cleansing my house,
Mm-hmm.
prepping up the protections,
Mm-hmm.
um, and doing my little spells.
Mm-hmm.
And she was all for it. She's like, "Don't forget, it's the first of the month. Let's go. We have to get the house
Aw.
cleansed." 180. Growing up,
Right.
that would have been taboo. Kind of
Oh yeah.
do that in your room,
Mm-hmm.
not on public.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm. Yeah. And I love that it creates community in the home when you get to do it together.
yeah,
You know, that's we forget community starts there in our dwellings.
yeah,
So to have everybody on board is really nice. So you have an Etsy store also called MCE, right?
yes,
Because behind you is like jewelry stuff.
yes. All my bauble, sorry,
Oh my gosh.
you know,
Look at
stuff
that.
to make,
Oh my
you know,
goodness.
jewels and bracelets. I
Ooh,
actually,
this feels really good. I'm just starting to open one. You sent me a
yes,
couple things. So
I,
I'm
I
opening one of them
have
now. Oh, those are
earrings.
beautiful. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. This feels so good. I'm getting tingles all over. Wow. She sent me a beautiful amethyst. It's amethyst, right? My
Smoke
glasses are.
quartz, smoky
It is
quartz.
smoky quartz. Okay, so it's not. I was like, my glasses are screwing up. Is it? But it is smoky quartz. Okay. You did not know this, but smoky quartz is one of my very, very, very favorite stones.
Yes,
I don't talk about it very much. I should talk about it more because I talk a lot about hematite because it's a lot of
yeah.
people need that right now.
I
But
have,
oh, this just oh
I
oh that's
have
beautiful.
my amethyst.
Oh, this is gorgeous. It's going on my desk. Hang on, I got more. You sent me more stuff,
Yes, I did.
Kim. That's why this is Kim's very first podcast interview. So,
Yeah,
ooh,
I was going to say, excuse my nervousness. Just I, you can hear my
you've
voice.
been just fine. You've been just fine. Oh wow, look at these. These are beautiful. I love that. What else? Now these types of things are in your Etsy store, correct?
Yes,
Oops.
yeah. I try to do as much crystal-based jewelry.
Oh, these are gorgeous. Look at that. You spoiled me. What the hell?
It's a thank you for everything you do for us.
Oh my god. Well, oh wow, these are going on right now. Look at this. Perfect. Actually, not that finger. Well,
Sorry.
we'll leave it there for now. That's okay. It fits perfect. I took my nails off. They were bugging me. I'll get them back on tomorrow. But or Monday. But that's gorgeous. This is a little onyx.
Yep,
Oh, that's gorgeous. I love
a little
that.
bohemian style.
That's
I,
me.
yes,
I'm the bohemian.
yes, and I have some newer
Oh,
ones
gorgeous.
I just made today.
Oh, pretty. Oh, those are gorgeous. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? That's really pretty. Oh, I love that.
So
That fits
for
just
right
right.
now, I find the base, and I can put the
Mm-hmm.
crystals and the gems in them.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm trying to learn how to actually make the ring bands and the base myself. So
Oh, that's very cool.
yeah, so I'm excited that I'll
I
be
love that.
putting up a bunch of new jewelry. Sorry, jewelry. I can't talk today.
It's okay.
A bunch of
I've had
new
my own
jewelry.
problems today.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This week, early in the week, probably like Monday, Tuesday,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll have a whole new slew. So, and I'll be doing
Mm-hmm.
a Patreon discount. So anybody
Nice.
in my Patreon or Laurie's Patreon, I'll be putting
Very
up
nice.
probably like a 20% discount. So
Very nice. I'll make
yeah,
sure that's in the post when I put it up in Patreon. So I'll do that when I put this segment specifically up. And then, yeah.
yeah.
But I'll put the Patreon link in the show notes because you're going to be giving me some links for the show notes.
Thank you.
So I've been bugging you forever to move your tuchus.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm a
and put yourself out there. You're doing great. I'm proud of
yeah.
you.
Thank you. I'm really trying now. Uh, I'm a Charlotte girl. I'm I get very nervous being on
Yeah,
camera. Off
yeah, I
camera,
get it.
I'm fine. I
I know.
can ramble on. I have no problems. It's that pesky camera kind of just makes me shy. I'm getting
Kim,
over this.
I'm gonna find some old videos from 2013. Eli found them. We all know Eli at this
Yes.
point, Eli Gomez. He found them on my old Vimeo account. And from when I was forced, and I mean forced, I was working for an online business school and they said, "Hey, there's this thing called live streaming. We've got 300 students for you." And I was like, I don't do camera. And they're like,
Yeah.
"No, you do great presentations." I'm like, as a voiceover person, I'm a vocalist. I am not an on camera person. And they're like, "Nah, you're great. You're going to do it." And I was like, I do not, like, my daughter will vouch. There's a lot of pictures like this. Like, so I know I look like a natural. I'm
Right.
not. It's a lot of practice. So
And
just
I'm
keep doing it.
yeah.
That's why I'm
Uh,
making you guys get up here.
I'm definitely working on it.
You're doing
Um,
great.
yeah. And I'm working on ignoring the feedback I get. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's like the ADHD brain. It's like squirrel.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that's why
Mm-hmm.
I sound funky today. I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
trying
you're getting
to
a little echo in your own headphones.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like slowly moving my head back so I can hear
Right.
you.
Do, 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 do,
Just,
do, do,
just
do, do, do.
that way I don't get as much feedback. Because when I don't
Mm-hmm.
hear myself talking
Mm-hmm.
through the headphones, I'm much more relaxed.
Right. Oh,
So
it's like that for everybody. You're
yeah,
doing great.
yeah,
And if and that's the thing. I want to highlight more of the people who are doing good work out in the world. There are some, just here's the deal. Here's a Laurie lecture.
yeah,
There are a lot of very confident, well practiced. Now, they might be shy, actually, like me, but they just have more practice in front of the camera. And because they're more confident on camera, they're able to put themselves out there and meet whatever agenda they have. Neither good nor bad. I'm not saying there's anything bad with that or good with that. It's just the truth. But there's so many talented, heartfelt, heart-centered people doing good stuff, and you are a wealth of knowledge. Like, you're
yeah.
an advocate for people. You're an advocate for people who well, you tell the
Yeah.
story. You are
So
amazing.
my child is neurospicy, and you know, being a single parent of a neurospicy child with other disabilities, both developmental and into medical, I've had to fight her school system pretty much
Mm,
all our life and
mhm,
advocate for proper
mhm,
care, proper support, and now they're transitioning to adulthood, um, turning 18 in a couple months. So
mhm,
I'm on that aspect currently of advocating and really trying to set them up into a good transition to adult supports, which are sorely needed right now prior to this past election and what this current administration is doing. This
mhm,
is an area that has been inadequate for
Mm-hmm.
years, for decades.
Mm-hmm.
And we're trying to get them into a good spot where they can be as independent as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is going to my legislators,
Mm-hmm.
lobbying for bills, working with
Mm-hmm.
places like the ARC, the ARC within my
Mm-hmm.
state, within my region.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, they have a support company or a service provider that comes out once a month. And I've been asked to volunteer on the Human Rights Committee. And then it's just occurred in the last 2 weeks. I've been asked to volunteer and become a board of director members for the same company.
Great.
I can actually affect change through this company and safeguard the
Mm-hmm.
clients for this
Mm-hmm.
company. And it's
Mm-hmm.
something I've always done. I do the same for animals. I'm an animal
Mm-hmm.
activist as well. Um, I also volunteer at our local animal rescue league with my child. Um, and being an activist, advocate is something that I've kind of, it's natural for me,
Mm-hmm.
but it's something I'm proud, I'm very proud to do it.
Right.
I always help everyone around me. That's my goal.
And that's what I love. You're bringing that to the table too, like helping people understand how they can be advocates and providing resources. You do that a lot in the Awake Space Patreon. In
Yes.
our community organizing thread, you put up useful resources, links to organizations, action steps people can do, besides cool recipes,
Yeah.
for other things. And again, you're a polymath. The time of the one note Johnny
Right.
is over.
Yep.
It is very important for people who are multi-passionate, multi-skilled to understand that makes you a multifaceted person. So like when you're looking at a diamond that's been cut, it sparkles more because of the amount of facets it has. So
Right.
I love that, you're starting to put yourself in your own setting. And I really encourage people to check out what Kim is doing. And check out the links in the show notes because Kim's got lots of goodies. She gives a lot, 120% of herself to everything she does. Um, and I appreciate you more than you know, because having patrons, it's not about the money. It's
Right.
about people who love what you do. And
Yeah.
there are, there are many other ways to make an income.
Yep.
It's really, that's fabulous. It's not like it's not important, but it's also that unshakable and unwavering appreciation because there are long nights
Yes.
sometimes, and those messages and the support of community coming the other way is really priceless. So thank you. And thank you for the really pretty, neon
You're
rings.
welcome. Thank
I'll get
you.
the earrings on for pictures. I can't
Yay.
do it with the headphones. So.
Thank you
But they're
so much.
beautiful. And
Thank you for me having on your podcast. I
well,
listen every Monday, hot off the presses. So I hope
yay.
everybody, you know, takes a listen.
Yeah. Man, that smoky quartz is sweet. Kim had no idea that smoky quartz is one of my very, very favorite crystal friends, as my friend Seth at Auric Voltage calls them. I literally felt just tingles the minute I grabbed it. So she picked out a goodie. I'm still wearing some beautiful rings she sent me. Um, she spoils me. that's one of the things I'm doing is I'm bringing people in the no longer published tier of Cosmic Surfers on, especially if they have a business they want to shout out. We got to support one another. Every time we support a small micro business, a little business owned by a mom or pop or individuals like myself or Kim, is money that isn't going to the big boys, at least not directly. And so the more we can circulate within our own economy, the better. There is that. I also want to give a shout out to my best friend in the whole wide world, Kirsten Soga, who is an amazing chocolatier. And I happen to know she's been making chocolate in the chocolate kitchen again. And it is biodynamic, which is better than organic. It is, oh my God, her base cacao is beyond fair trade and it is divine in and of its own right. I can eat it and I'm allergic to chocolate. So it is not processed in any way that gets me. And it is so beautifully grown. It has its own many different flavors depending on the oat tear it comes from. But anyway, Kirsten is an outstanding chocolate lady. So I will put her link in my show notes. You can check her out. Kirsten's also running up the mystery school meetings for me every single week. She facilitates that coming together. Anybody can facilitate the meetings, but Kirsten makes sure they happen. And I appreciate that. So giving Kirsten a big shout out here. We'll get her back on the podcast. It's always meaningful conversation when we get a chance to do that. Mystery School is getting some special pods this month. I'm getting around to all the stuff I've been wanting to do. What a mean, not enough time. But now that I'm getting a little more help in the editing department, slowly but surely, we're building a really good team. Shout out to Alicia, my assistant, for doing her damnedest to keep me in line. And that's like herding squirrels. Uh, and my daughter, as always, Sarah, is an immaculate partner in crime. And you can check her out during our Friday game nights. I know a lot of people don't quite understand why we'd be role playing, but I'm trying to teach the power of turning your attention for a couple of hours and doing something that seems meaningless, but it's fun. There is power in that because it takes away the do or die, the life or death nature of the moment so you can restore and get back into the fray. Oh, we always sleep really good after game night, and all of us have been finding that. So that's super fun. Oh, what a ride, what a ride, what a ride. I'll give you a sneak peek of the article. I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's long, but I always read the articles all out for a special patron only podcast for magazine subscribers and above. But I want to read to you a little bit about what I wrote about holding consciousness. All right. One of the most important lessons any metaphysical student can learn is how to hold their consciousness steady. Think of the scene in Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, when Luke is in the swamp with Yoda. Yoda is having Luke focus on levitating the fighter that has sunk into the muck, and Luke struggles to hold his consciousness beyond the outcome, and the fighter falls back and sinks into the mud. Why? Luke is trying to force the outcome. It isn't until Luke can allow his focus to flow that the fighter can be removed from the mucky swamp. It's not mere fiction, though we don't often use our consciousness to levitate items, and why would we? A neat parlor trick? A way to show off? We certainly can't manipulate physical objects until we can focus our own consciousness on ourselves. Without self-mastery, actualization, and realization, we are unable to manipulate the world around us. But what does that what does it mean to hold our consciousness? to hold our mind steady, to be unwavering, to allow ourselves the ability to be mentally and emotionally supple in the face of a chaotic outer world, grants us more than peace. It grants us power. And much like Luke in the swamp, holding our consciousness takes time and practice. We won't automatically succeed. We will waver. Even Yoda wavered. It's just that in comparison to a neophyte, his wavering was less perceptible. We will never be 100% mindful at all times. We will never achieve perfection in our consciousness. And that is not a flaw. That is part of our design. To expect perfection or even a modicum of mastery at the beginning of a learning process is ego-based. Holding ourselves to arbitrary high standards is not only a form of self-oppression, it's egotistical and gives us the excuse to stop practicing. An effective practice for holding your consciousness steady, regardless of outer circumstances, is something I call hyper-awareness. It's something I developed during the last leg of my healing journey from PTSD. Some people might call it CPTSD, though the DSM-5 does not recognize CPTSD. We often find ourselves hypervigilant when life seems chaotic, our brains producing the hormones that trigger fight or flight reactions and leaving us at the mercy of that state of consciousness. However, science has proven that our brains are designed to do what we tell them to do, and we are not at the mercy of our limbic system, even if it feels like it. Full disclosure, it took weeks of practice before I noticed a measurable difference, and it was several years of daily practice before I was more responsive versus reactive on a day-to-day basis. I also had the added benefit of weekly sessions with a PhD psychologist, the late Dr. John Silva, who monitored my progress and helped me measure results. It helps to have a team and a judgment-free support system. That's my way of saying I'm not making any health claims. Hyper-awareness in the everyday. Hyper-awareness is a concept of flipping the switch on hypervigilance or extreme stress. A gentle way to begin this practice is to do the following. 1. Narrate your actions to stay in the present moment. Imagine you wake up in the morning and instead of just rolling out of bed and robotically starting your day like you always do, you start by saying or thinking, I am awake. If you stretch before rolling out of bed, narrate that too. I'm stretching my arms and I yawned. Now I'm going to roll out of bed. My feet are on the ground. It seems silly, yet this deceptively simple practice is helpful in grounding you to your present moment. You can do this with any task, like washing dishes, driving your vehicle, doing computer work. It's important to be descriptive as well. My feet are on the floor. The hardwood is cold against my toes. I want to put socks on. Hyper-awareness in the everyday continued. 2. Pay attention to your body posture and correct it as often as necessary. Our body responds to our thoughts and emotions. Paying attention and correcting our posture and bodily reactions helps us further release tension and stress. You can lower cortisol and other stress hormones by changing and holding a less defensive posture. It might feel uncomfortable at first and vulnerable because we do things to protect ourselves unconsciously. So try this alone at home rather than in public venues when you're first starting, just to make it gentle and easier. If you notice your hands are clenched, open your hands. Taking a few deep inhales and exhaling slowly will help release the tension. If you notice you're sitting with your arms folded across your middle and you're hunched over, sit up straight, stretch, and allow your arms to move to your sides. We often hunch and clench our bodies to protect our vital organs when we feel a threat. The goal of noticing and changing your body posture is to help your body, mind, and self feel less threatened and secure. And 3, if you have thoughts on repeat, learn to pattern interrupt. Intrusive and obsessive thinking is a tough thing to shake. as easy as it as it's easy to get stuck in a loop when we're feeling overwhelmed and hopeless. All right. If you want the rest of the article with the rest of that exercise, you can check out the magazine and the Patreon coming out this week. I was hoping to have it out on Tuesday, but we'll see how that goes, as my writing schedule has been interrupted by life because it's March and it's 2025. But again, if you're a magazine subscriber and you haven't seen your horoscopes and the headlines in the sneak peek, unedited, hot off the presses right after I wrote them, you can check those posts out in the Patreon. Posted them last week. So, yay. So, friends, I know things are uncertain, and I know there are people who claim to have special insight, and they're saying we're going to have a civil war, and they're saying we're going to have nuclear war, and I do not see global thermal nuclear war. I do see the potential for tactical use of weapons, unfortunately. I don't think it's a guarantee or a certainty it will happen, but I do see the potential. I do see the potential for Europe taking action in defense of Ukraine. Depends on what happens here and how we further isolate ourselves in the United States and how things happen here. But I am concerned about the DC area as we move towards the end of April. I think if you're going to protests, that you need to be very, very mindful of your surroundings and be very, very prepared for pushback, especially if you're in the DC area. And wherever you live, so far it's been pretty good, but things could turn around that full moon. So I think we're going to see interesting events. I think we could see several world leaders this month have health crises. We could see people be deposed. We could see, don't get your hopes up, it may not be the ones we want. But it could be. There could be some health crises going around. Whether or not we hear about it or see it in the moment remains to be seen. You have a lot more power than you know. And that doesn't mean we can wave a magic wand and suddenly make everything okay. But you can make what you can okay in the moment. All right. And if it's your birthday month, you can still have a good birthday. I said so. Okay. What's going on outside of you and your immediate environment does not mean you don't get to have a good birthday. You can have a very good birthday, even if the whole world is having a crisis. And we've had multiple members talk about how they've had personal good days in the middle of the shit show, okay, in the Patreon. I just love the comments and the activity in the community that has built up in the Awake Space. It is like hearts joining together. Like minds can be dangerous, but like hearts grow beautiful gardens. And I thought I'd talk a little bit about gardening. Why don't we do that to end the podcast and talk a little bit about what you can do to grow a little bit of a little something something on your own. So, gardening and astrology. Some of the oldest subjects, I'm going to move the mic a little closer. One of the oldest subjects when it comes to astrology is horticulture, which gardening is included in. The phases of the moon play a large role in gardening. In fact, that's where people got the idea for the manifestations. Okay, which manifestation just means to reveal. There's a whole process in that where we're getting clear, we set intentions, we allow things to maturate, and then we harvest or receive. And there's 8 phases. All right. But let's talk about new and full moons. On new moons, we want to plant our seeds. Okay, this is a great time to germinate. You can do it in the 3 days of the phase, Full moons are not a great time to plant. Okay. Um, now, you could buy plants at the nursery on a full moon. That would be fine. In fact, if you're just getting started gardening, you might just want to buy starts. Okay. Another thing about gardening you want to know is you don't have to grow all your food. You can just buy a couple plants. You just get a tomato plant and try it out if you've never done it before. You could get some green onion seeds and try those. You don't have to do a big garden, but growing some easy things like lettuce, spinach, chard, um, rocket, or arugula, very easy to grow. Yeah. There are times, and I'm writing more about this. I'm putting in a little gardening guide into the Awake Space Astrology magazine. There are times where certain signs work better with certain kinds of fruit and vegetables. Okay. So, with the new moon being in Aries this month and also being a total, or not a total, but a partial solar eclipse, if it's not an eclipse where you live, meaning if it's not visible where you live, then you start things. You could start seeds, or you could get things like tomatoes, peppers, chilies, bell peppers, chilies, anything in the capsaicin family, radishes, um, these these types of things. Things have a little bit of spice or bite to them with that new moon in Aries. It's a great time to get either starts, and you could get any kind of start, or plant seeds for those kinds of things. Try radishes. Those are pretty simple to grow. Watercress would be another one. So those are all things you can do. Full moons, not a great time to plant seeds and start germination, but it's a great time you can go buy whole up plants at a nursery or something, or a garden center. Again, if you're just getting started, I wouldn't invest a ton of money. I would start with something you like to eat. Okay. Something you like to eat. Something to be like, I'd be really proud of this if I grew this. I look forward to cooking it. Okay. So, you don't have to be like, I have to survive and I'm going to build a survival garden. Yeah, if you're just getting started, probably not the best idea. If you're an old hand at gardening, you can improve your gardening by looking at the times for planting. That's what the Farmer's Almanac uses. It's basically astrometeorology and gardening astrology as well. So those are just a couple of tips. This month is not a bad month to get starts. It's not a bad month to plant seeds, depending where you live. Alrighty. So, to end the podcast with something pleasant, something hopeful, I thought we would talk about the upside of 2025. It was going to be disruptive regardless, and I kept saying that. It wouldn't matter which administration, we were looking at global change. And we are change-resistant creatures. It usually takes a crisis for humans to wake up, become aware, because when we're comfortable, there's no need to change, right? If you're comfy, and it's amazing at the amount of discomfort we can be comfortable with, then there's no change. Sometimes things have to be knocked about to make a difference. And no, it didn't have to go this way. There were other potentials and possibilities. But it's the possibility that became the probability that is the present. So we're going to live with that. That's where we're at. Magical thinking isn't going to suddenly shift us into a new reality. What will help is collectively shifting our attention and our awareness. And March is a really good month to do that. With Mercury retrograde coming up, and we'll talk about that next week more. And in the Awake Space Astrology magazine, I've written a Mercury retrograde and a Venus retrograde survival guide, because they'll both be retrograde this month. And that's not a bad thing. To be honest, it's slowing the roll. Okay. There will be mishaps and strange happenings and things that make you go, all through March. And if you look at it from an outside perspective, instead of being collectively embarrassed, which we can still be if we want to, go, that's a good thing. That's going to slow the roll. That's a good thing. That's causing pressure to be applied that might slow things down, that might cause a redirection, because redirecting is easier than stopping something that's in full momentum. And like I said, about anything started during the Mars retrograde period where people were barreling forward is bound to not work out all the way for, at all. And in fact, not Mercury, but Mars is in its shadow phase. Okay, there is no pre-shadow phase. It's a pre-retrograde is the technical term. But there is the shadow, which is the post-retrograde phase, where the planet is going to trace back over the area it was retrograde. So Mars is in its shadow until it gets back into Leo, when it will be opposing Pluto. And that's at the end of April. And that's when I expect some big bada booms to happen. It doesn't mean it's going to be civil war or the end of the world, but we probably will see some kind of military action somewhere in the world. It doesn't necessarily mean the United States. Okay. The best thing you can do is take it a week at a time, just like I am in the Patreon. And in fact, let me end you with some comments from the poll I put out on Sunday. I was very moved because I was asking people what they wanted more of as we move through 2025, with a very cute little meme of a dog that says, "I'm curious." So I asked people, because I can come up with a million different things, but I want to know what people want. What do you want more of? And I'll make it. And so the options were, I want more beginner level astrology. I'm here for the horoscopes. I'm here for the discounts. I want more about using the energy of these times. I'm here for the chat and live streams and other. Please list in the comments. There are so many comments. By the way, the overwhelming majority of people, at 56% of respondents, voted for, I want more about using the energy of these times. And we had a message from Andy from Down Under. I'm really happy with what you share, as is. That being said, as a Libra Mars, and decision making for this one is hard. I'd say energy work or transits if I had a gun to my head. Jen with the black heart. It's just how her username is. Merch. I'll get to merch someday. She's on me about merch. Corey, choose one also, but honestly, I'm loving everything. Still want to go through it all and learn more. I appreciate it all. The live streams have been so great. I'm still low tier, but hoping to change that later. Well, thank you, Corey. I appreciate everybody who supports the podcast, whether for free or as a supporting member. If you're a free member, notice that you're starting to get a little more content. It's coming. I told you I would. The people who aren't patient, maybe you don't make content by yourself. Maybe you're also not almost 56 years old making content by yourself, but I'm getting the team together and it's getting a little easier for me. But anyway, as just a $5 level and and everything up, because my tiers kind of work like the top gets each thing sequentially down. So it's like when you go up, you don't lose anything, you just get the other stuff. But anywho, if you go into the shop, the ebooks are free. That is the ultimate cheat sheet, which is Astrology Guide Volume 1, Issue 1. And it is literally everything you need in the basic of astrology, including my favorite thing I ever wrote, which is the story of the houses, which explains the expansion of consciousness if we walk around the wheel. Then there is the guide to instinct and intuition, where you can learn about your clairs through your placements. Yeah, and I describe the difference between instinct and intuition. It's a little more metaphysical, a little more esoteric. And then the third guide you get, as in, that's for free. Just go into the shop and you can just download it as a $5 and up member, is your guide to Chiron, your light post on the healing path. And I explain why it isn't the wound you cannot heal and all of that fun stuff, and why astrologers did say it. So I can give you a history breakdown on that. You get access, if you're a free member too, you get access to intro to the natal chart, how to find transits, how to know if you're in your Saturn return and understanding Saturn returns, introduction to interceptions, that whole thing. That's all there. Just do a search. You got Video Palooza. Love and Sex and Astrology it's something supporting members $5 and up get. It's one of my favorite little classes I taught. There is so much information in the Patreon. It can be overwhelming. We're working on cleaning it up. But yeah, so much good information coming your way and more to come. Big thank you to all of you for supporting the Awake Space. If you want to check out more about what we've got, you can head over to the Patreon link in the show notes, and it's patreon.com/the Awake Space. Next week, we're going to talk about that full moon coming up and Mercury retrograde. I'll give you a survival guide. I'll give you what's in the headlines, and I'll help you with more information about how to manage the energy.